All right, hey, welcome to Hit. This is Chris Cicchinelli, and we are talking everything high-intensity tactics for growth. And today, I have an awesome sidekick. Suzanne, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
Well, I knew that this was going to be right up your alley. When it came down to making sure you get some life coaching,
I'm in.
I knew this would be like right there for you, because we not only are going to get life coach, but we also had this young lady that unbelievable
I
professional.
know, I'm a huge fan.
At our our national training here in Cincinnati, which was fantastic. Brought down the house, rocked in, unbelievable. So, today it is going to be fun because we have Miss Andrea Owen that's going to be on here today. She's excited. We are excited to have her. She's also the author, mentor, and certified personal life coach. Is back on Hit. You might have seen or heard her on the last one, which was fantastic. Andrea, what's shaking?
Hi, good morning. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we are super excited about having you. And listen, I know that there's a lot of Pure Romance consultants that are listening. They follow you. They're listening to your podcast. Fantastic. We just really appreciate everything you've done for us.
Thank you. I mean, your people are, now I'm going to try not to be biased, but I think that your people are the most charismatic, the most enthusiastic people I have ever met.
Well, hey, listen, you know what they are? They have so much fun. They have so much energy. Mm-hmm. And when they gravitate to somebody, they have this really big thing, which is they're honest. When they love somebody, they love them, man.
Yes.
I mean, and it is,
they're all in.
They're all in.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the things that's why, when we start doing this, they were like, oh gosh, we want to listen to her again. She was fantastic. So, appreciate that. So what's been going on since the last time we talked to you?
I talked to you all in the spring, I believe it was. So I'm writing my third book, which has been, as you know, if anyone listened to my talk when I was there, doing the keynote, I'm always really transparent. I never try to put myself on a pedestal and just be like, oh, my life is great, roses all the time. And this summer has been quite an up-leveling. I think every time I've written a book, it's asked something new of me, and this one is no different. So I've been going through my own stuff, emotional, mental, even spiritual, and physical too. I started really, gunning it with working out. I'm almost 45. And so, noticing some changes. Mm-hmm. And it's been a big last few months.
Well, I think the last time you and I talked that we were roughly about the same age. So I know those changes that are definitely creeping each and every day. But it's great because I think the big thing that I watch you on Instagram. I mean, you're just a normal person going through normal issues, normal, situations each and every day. I mean, when you think about it, you've helped women, kind of feel good about themselves, and this whole kind of silencing the inner critic that you kind of put in your book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it started when I very first started my practice. I mean, even before that, I mentioned this in my keynote, that when I was at coach training, I remember sitting in the conference room and the instructors in the front of the room were talking about negative self-talk. They called it the saboteur, which I think is hilarious. Try to put a sexy name on it. It's still negative self-talk. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, can we stop the presses here? Because this is something that I can manage. I always just thought that voice that told me, don't do it. You're going to look stupid in front of everybody. Who are you fooling? You got here because of luck. I mean, I could go on and on. I thought that was my truth. And that was just something that I couldn't control or manage. So when I found out there were tools to try and manage it, not that you can make it completely go away, but that I could kind of control it, I was hooked. And so it's been something that I have seen over and over again. Everyone deals with, not just women. Men have their own inner critics, and it was a catalyst from the beginning of my practice. I knew that this was something I had to talk about that was foundational.
Yeah, I would believe. I think the inner critic plays a lot in even my day-to-day perspective. I go through the inner critic a lot, like that thing that sits on my shoulder that goes, gosh, you could have done this better, or, why didn't you work harder on that? So do you face that, Suzanne?
100. Women are always second guessing themselves. So what I liked about what Andrea has is can you tell us, what are we supposed to be saying to ourselves to kind of get past this hump? You have a few little triggers.
Say that last part again.
How can we get past the hump of the silencing our critic? What can we do?
Well, and I even hesitate to use the term silencing your inner critic. And so, what I like to do is acknowledge it for what it is. Because at the end of the day, my friend Kate says our inner critics are just fear with a really crappy communication skills. They just don't know how to talk to us kind. And it's fear based is what it is. And a lot of it, without getting too much into it, it's also shame based. We're trying to avoid being ashamed. We're trying to avoid looking stupid in front of people. We want to be seen a certain way at our job, with our family, on social media, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that as long as we understand that it's just a biological human experience that we're having, it can kind of lessen feeling like there's something wrong with you. And what I tell people to do is just acknowledge it. And I think journaling is hugely helpful. Make a list of all of the things that your inner critic says to you. What are the areas of your life where the inner critic gets the loudest for a lot of your consultants? It's probably that. It's probably their business. And from there, there's different exercises that you can do. I mean, but really the first step is to understand it and kind of, I do this like, I see you, inner critic, and I understand that you're just trying to protect me.
It's crazy because here's the thing. I have 3 small children. I think you have a couple kids. So
2.
the when you start thinking about this starts at such a early age. This inner critic is defined by what happens at school. What were we good in class, not good in class? Did they put us in the slow reading group, the fast reading group? Were we the athlete or not the athlete during recess? Did we get picked number 1 or number 2 for kickball? It is absolutely amazing that we still have those insecurities as adults. It's been impressioned on us at such this early age that I see it with my kids all the time. I'm like, look, you know what? You might not be the best, basketball player, the best ballerina, or the best whatever, but you are awesome at what you do, and quit worrying about this like you have to be unbelievable. The law of comparison today that we live in is absolutely it's mind-numbing to me that a 12-year-old little girl is comparing themselves to Ariana Grande or comparing them to their girlfriend down. Oh, look at, she's developing and I'm not developing. All these different things that are going on. And so when women, come up, or even men for that example, and say, I want this kick-ass life, but I can't really silence this. I feel like I'm just never going to be good enough. What's the advice that you give to somebody?
Yeah. And it's the age-old question of, do I measure up? Am I good enough? And again, I do think it's sort of like this regular human experience, but like you mentioned, Chris, it's things that, it could be like these innocuous things that we say to our children that we don't think are that big of a deal, that they internalize. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening, and maybe even the 2 of you think of a teacher that said something that we remember forever and ever, or it's a former relationship or a current partner that you have. And I think for women too, I'll call out the elephant in the room, our culture, we are inundated with things, media, and just we live in a culture that tells us that we either are too much or not enough. And one of the tools that I use is and I actually just did this a few weeks ago as I'm struggling to level up in my own professional life. I found myself struggling to write this book proposal, and I just am riddled with fear. And this is actually, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about this in her book, Big Magic. And I love the way that she angled it. And I've been doing this for years, but slightly different. And I wrote a letter to fear, specifically if you have, because we're all in a relationship with our fear. So if fear were a person in your life, what would you say to it if you were trying? I'm not asking you to say like you need to piss. I don't know if I can curse on this show.
Yeah, go. Shit, I do it all the time.
It's I don't necessarily think it's a great idea to tell your fear to fuck off. Again, it's trying to protect you. It thinks it has a job, like a German Shepherd. And so my advice to that is to, again, acknowledge it. And so what I did in this particular exercise is I wrote a letter to fear as if it were someone in my life who's doing its damnedest to protect me. So I acknowledge everything it's doing. Like, hey, thanks for looking out for me those times that I really did need you so I didn't get murdered. Things like that. And I like to add humor to mine, so mine was also a little bit funny. But I also said, thank you, and I've got this. here's why I know this is true. And I did a whole paragraph about all of the things that I've accomplished in the past that I was afraid to do then and did it anyway. And it just it was like a big exhale. And it wasn't magic. I wasn't suddenly just all of a sudden had all of this confidence, but it's continuous exercises like that that can bring you closer to the thing that you are wanting to do.
I think it's interesting you say that because, when you think about fear being such a driver, we have to think fear a lot because we wouldn't be in the situations that a lot of us are in. But I think it's more of how we control it or how we, utilize it to propel us. Like, the fear of not being good enough was what I was told in high school, right? Like my high school teachers are like, I think you should do something with your hands. You're not really smart. Your grade point average is a 2.3. You've been in CP2 classes your entire since ninth grade, and it's so funny to sit back and think about that because that fear of not being good enough or not being smart enough actually propelled me. I was able to use that as kindling to start a fire inside of myself where, people ask me all the time, well, what was probably your biggest driving factor? It was the fear of not being good enough. But once I was able to control that inner voice and to be able to apply it, not as to run from not being good enough, but to utilize it as fire for me, I was able to do something, where it got down to making a donation to my high school or to my college. And my college was a place where they were like, hey, you could do anything you want, be anybody you want. Look, you just put the time in. You're not going to be defined by other people. The only definition of yourself is going to come from you or come from within. And I remember sitting there when I wrote that final check I wrote the check, photocopied one of the checks, and I sent the big check in, and then I sent the other photocopied. And on the photocopy check, I said, I just want to tell you thank you for being the fire, for making me be fearful of the success that I was going after and to get me up every day and to drive me each and every moment of my life because I was fearful that I would never be good enough, and you helped me overcome that. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I want you to know that I made $1 million donation to my college, and I want to send you this photograph check that says it wouldn't be possible without you. Thanks so much, Chris Cicchinelli.
I love that story. And I love that you used it for motivation and you didn't, and then this is what I'm hearing is that because some people think that if they learn to manage their inner critic, that they will become a slacker because they think that their inner critic is the thing that motivates them to be better. And I call BS on that because no one bullies themselves into being better. No one beats themselves up into losing weight or becoming healthier. It can change your behavior for a while, but the long game can be detrimental to your mental health and your emotional health. And so and maybe Suzanne, you can relate. Like I find it hugely motivating when I am underestimated.
Oh.
100%. Yes.
I would say that about Suzanne. Yeah. Give her a project. You like that, don't you?
Right. I 100% agree. People look at me and they're like, oh, she's just this little. When people give you something and they think you've got to overperform.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when
just
people
watch me do this better than you think I can do it.
You, like when we do a handstand competition, I doubt you that you're going to be able to stand on your hands for like 2
minutes. I will
beat
you.
You'll beat me. She's got that.
Suzanne's practicing till 1 a.m. the night before. Well, I'm sure a lot of your consultants maybe have come to their family and been like, hey, I'm going to start this thing. I'm joining Pure Romance. And they're like, oh, giving them all the reasons it's not going to work, or, oh, that's cute that you think you can do that, or, and you're just, I think, and I make this up, I don't know, but I think that women are more underestimated than men.
100%.
I have been so many times not taken seriously, and I 100% use it as a motivator. And something in my mind just clicks and I'm like, oh, watch me.
Yeah. Well, and that's huge with entrepreneurs.
That can be healthy. But I just want people to watch out for when their inner critic is telling them, just beating them into submission so that they just try not to use your inner critic as a motivator because in the long run, it will hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will tell you right now. You see some things that are going on in the world today. When you think about like life, there's a lot of like small challenges, small changes that are happening today. How do you sit back and you think about how do you make a difference in your life and in your family's life each and every day to kind of stay on the positive train where it is the law of comparison out there, and it is difficult for women business owners. Now working with them for 19 years, going on my 20th year. Because they put so much pressure on themselves about being a good mom, about being a good significant other, about being a good business owner, big leader, being a great in the community, don't want to miss PTA. You're like in an area where it's almost like we feel like we're setting up them for failure. I mean, because they want to be all to everybody.
All the things. Yeah. That's such a good question. And I've so been in that place. And for me, it's sort of the question of, how do you manage life balance? And I answer that by, I don't very well.
Yeah.
And it is this constant sort of ebb and flow. And some days I'm nailing it. And other days I'm falling flat on my face and I need to apologize to my kids for being passive aggressive to them when I was really mad about something else, or I'm just stressed out because I overbooked that day or something like that. And I think that the thing that popped into my head as you started to ask me the question, and I'm sort of roundabout answering it, is that what I am trying to do is break any kind of cycle that I felt was unhealthy that was passed down to me. Let me preface this by saying my parents 100% did the best they could, and they were freaking fantastic for the lack of tools that were handed down from them, from their parents. Hallelujah. They did the best. And there are certain things that I've had conversations with my mom about this. My dad has passed away, but she's admitted, she's like, we didn't grow up in families where we talked about hard things, where we talked to our children as if they were adults and they really did understand a lot of the things that we didn't think that they did. And so for me, it's about parenting the biggest significant thing that I am trying to carry forward day to day is there's a quote in personal development that says, trauma passes down through families until someone's courageous enough to feel it. And for me, that looks like healing a lot of generational shit that has happened and having conversations with my children about it and openly healing, making therapy okay and not taboo anymore and things like that. I think if you can do that, everyone listening, if you can do that, you are making huge changes, not just in your family, but in your community and beyond.
I totally agree with that. And it is conversations that, I like I said, my mom's been great. She's awesome. But there was conversations that we did not have. I always wonder though, am I going to talk to my kids too much? Am I going to screw these kids up? I mean,
you are one way or another, Chris. I can guarantee they're going to talk about you in therapy.
I know that.
Just do your best.
That's what I tell these parents. I'm always like, they're like, I feel like I'm being open. I'm being transparent, but I sit back and go, gosh, are they going to think the same way about me? I mean, and it is crazy.
You're going to mess up.
Yeah, I know. So it is one of those things.
100%.
It's hard.
My mom didn't
hard,
talk about a lot.
I just try to pick. And at the end of the day, just do your best.
Okay, Andrea, I read your blog all the time. You had a great podcast blog on ways to be kind to yourself, which I think right now, going into the holidays, everything's getting busy. Can we talk about the ways that you are preaching people to be kind to themselves? Not preaching, that's the wrong word. Expressing. You're opening up our eyes.
Talking, getting up on my soapbox. Oh my gosh, I write so many different things, Suzanne. I might not even remember exactly what I said in that email or
No.
Hold on. Welcome to my world. I go through that on a daily basis. I'm like, what did I say when I was on stage at that one place? And then somebody goes, I love when you said, I'm like, do you understand most of that shit? I'm like in the moment and I'm going through and I'm just sharing my life with you. I feel like I'm an open book most of the time.
Well, I've got them right here. If you need to be,
go ahead and I can expand.
You said to know what a utopian existence is, to know what your triggers are, to be aware of what you're thinking in terms of black or white, take inventory of how you speak to yourself in your mind, and then being aware of how you speak to yourself and others.
Yeah, I covered. Tell me the second one again. That was the one I want to speak to.
Take inventory.
Take inventory of how you speak to yourself in your mind, and then knowing what your triggers are.
Knowing what your triggers are. Okay, so I feel like I talked about the last few that you mentioned about really paying attention to what your inner critic says to you. And also, just to add on to that one, what I encourage people to do is also have like an accountability buddy, an accountability partner who also, because a lot of times what's going on in your head is also coming out of your mouth. So that person, you have like a pact with this person or more than one, maybe it's the people on your team. And you lovingly call each other out when you hear each other, when you're talking, find yourself talking bad about yourself. This can even be like a lot of people, and I even do this too, when you're being self-deprecating. And that can kind of, the lines are blurry there on what is really being hard on yourself and self-deprecating. So side note on that, as far as triggers, okay, we all have them. And I'll give you a quick example. There was one time my husband and I got into an argument, and which doesn't happen all that often. We have a great relationship and it's been 11 years. So it's been a journey. We didn't start out this way. We learn how to talk to each other. I know you're shocked, but I'm more of an extrovert, and I want to talk about things like in real time.
I'm just going to go ahead and be quiet on that one. Go ahead.
I want to talk about things in real time as they happen. My husband, on the other hand, processes more internally and is more of an introvert, needs time to process quietly by himself, and then wants to circle back later. And more so in the beginning of our relationship, this was a huge trigger for me. So this one particular time we got into an argument. I don't even remember what the argument was about. And he got in his car and drove off.
Whoa.
Right?
Wow.
And I went spiraling down was planning out where I was going to live as a single mother. I'm like, where are the apartment complexes in this area? I don't even know where they are. What are the better ones? How can I and there a couple things were happening there. I was totally 100% triggered. In my first marriage, it was disastrous. He ended up leaving me and cheating on me. And so I go to that place immediately of, this is it. He's leaving me. And he never once in this argument said that that's what he wanted to do. And later on, we did agree that I'm like, if you're going to drive off, I need you to tell me instead of just leaving. So that's one thing. Make sure that your partner knows what your triggers are. I think if you are in a romantic relationship, it's part of the deal to know what each other's triggers are and do your best not to do that. Or if you do trigger that person, acknowledge it and talk about it. And the other thing that I was doing in that moment was that it's easier, and by easier, I mean, it's my way of avoiding what is actually happening and feeling my feelings to plan. If I felt like I have some grasp of control on this situation, if I can plan out where I'm going to move to and our child custody agreement.
My gosh.
Looking back on it, it was bananas, the place that I went to. But that was one of my hugest triggers. And it also required me to be vulnerable and tell my husband and say, listen, this, granted, you do need to tell me if you're going to drive off like that, but I understand that you need time to process. And this is one of my hugest triggers that comes from a previous relationship. And I need you to understand that and not make fun of me. He didn't, but you know what I mean? Like, we need to understand what our triggers are. I'm sure a lot of people listening are probably know what yours are. You get to a certain age and you just know. Talk about them with your partner, and also be really compassionate with yourself, because sometimes it's trauma. These are big deals that aren't something that you just need to quote unquote get over.
It's so funny because I will tell people this all the time. If you feel like that you can't discuss the triggers, because I am the same way with you. Jessica and I have been married now 15 years, going together, 17 together. And I know it's shocking, but I'm also the extrovert.
Totally surprised.
Yeah. Are you surprised? I
No
knew it.
way.
I'm sorry. I was going to throw that shocker in it. Everybody
so shy.
listening. Yeah. So, Jessica's the same way, needs a process. But, we went and did counseling so we could actually be able to talk about our triggers, because I think, having a third neutral party in the mix. So, because sometimes the trigger could be having a discussion about this. And so, for Jessica, I didn't know that, but having a discussion about anything that was confrontational, which I looked at it was just a discussion.
I think we're married to the same person.
Yeah, she looked at it as confrontational. I'm like, whoa. I just want to have a discussion.
Conversation.
She goes, I'm not ready to have this. I mean, why are we fighting about this? I'm like, I'm not even arguing.
So she might have triggers around that from her family of origin.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so we had to go through that. And it was very, very helpful, because I was, you have this kind of mediator. It's like a referee. It's kind of like, it's good, because it's like, whoa, time out. No.
Well, you do take.
Yeah. I got to work on I'm aggressive and.
But you also take direction. If someone is an expert and they're telling what.
I'll listen, but I agree. But just being cognizant of triggers, I highly recommend. I think that was one of the best ones out there. So. Good.
Like, especially with the holidays coming.
Yes.
So come the triggers.
And it's not just, yes, especially with holidays. And it's not just your romantic partner. It's your people on your team.
Right.
It's your parents. It's, and also it allows you to be not only compassionate with yourself, but compassionate with the person who's sharing that with you.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let me ask you this question. So somebody out there right now, they're in their business and they're trying to grow, and they're getting a lot of kind of look in this business. I tell everybody it's not easy. I mean, it's not an easy business. When you got to market for yourself, you're in control of your own inventory, you're in control of your recruiting, you're in charge of your kind of your payroll. How do you deal with somebody going through owning and operating business? You operate yours, own yours. How does one get the mindset that, hey, give yourself some time. Give yourself, now, that doesn't mean time meaning watching Netflix and all the other stuff, but giving yourself time to actually see a success, because a lot of people want it immediate in the world that we live in today.
Yeah. And I think it's different now as we record this at the end of 2019 than it was when I started in 2010. And the advantage I think that I had was that we weren't inundated with so many success stories online, and you can do this in your business in 6 months, yada, yada, yada. I think that it's something that needs to be worked on regularly. What's funny is in the very beginning of my business, I did something called the future self exercise. I don't know if you've done that. It's fun. It's visualization. And it was 20 years into the future. And what I saw and heard my future self tell me was, you need to slow down and just have patience to see it through. And that was even back then. And that was the best advice I've ever given myself. But I'm not going to lie, Chris. I do think that it's a struggle being inundated with what we see today and how fast you need to scale. And also, good for you, people listening who want it that bad. The thing that has held me is realizing a couple of things. That acknowledging how far that I've come, even if someone's listening to this who's just starting out, just the fact that you made the decision to do this and drew a line in the sand and were like, I'm going to make this happen come hell or high water. And I'm going to work, as hard as I can to make it happen. That's a huge accomplishment. That's way more than a lot of people do. So looking back on how far you've come, I keep my old journals. This is just an example of how to see how far you've come, because I like to look back and read kind of how messed up my mindset was back then, and also see my own awakening. So number one, look back and acknowledge how far you've come. And for me, and I don't know if this just comes with personality, but I kind of think it does. And I think you just make the decision. I made the decision that it was just going to work. I didn't even have, well, that's kind of a lie. I did have a plan B, because I used to be a personal trainer and I kept my personal training certification. But I like to think about going back to that made my body and my heart hurt, because I knew that this direction that I was going to work out for me. And it was really the path that I was meant for. And just also, just kind of the regular stuff I think that everybody says, goal setting, writing it down every day. I write the same 10 things down in my journal every day. I miss some days, but it's the same 10 things. I mean, that's it. I don't do any big journaling thing, but it's the same 10 things, and it's personal and professional goals that I have. If I feel inspired, I pull out my notes app on my phone and say, by the end of October, I will have, and I write down like 3 things. It's really just basic things like that. And just I'm going to say it again, making the decision that it is going to work. I have no idea what it's going to look like, because we don't. So I have the word surrender tattooed on the inside of my arm for moments like that. I don't know how this is going to look. All I know is that it's going to work out.
You know what? Can I tell you? That is fantastic, because you don't know what's going to happen other than it's going to work out. You know what? And that's exactly how we scaled here.
You have to believe in yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no one else will if you won't.
Right.
And I'm glad I'm glad that you saved the certificate, but I'm glad it sits in the wall. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing right now, because you're changing a lot of people's lives. And I think that's important. All right, Andrea, if they want to follow you on a blog, or they want to follow you or get in communication with you, how can they find you?
I mean, Your Kick-Ass Life, pretty much everywhere. The podcast, Instagram are the 2 main places I hang out.
I love it. I know you listen to it.
100%. I love her
Suzanne.
Insta stories too.
I know. I watch her Insta stories. I get it all, man. I'm watching. I'm a subscriber.
I know things about her.
Oh,
that,
you're sweet.
I'm a subscriber.
Guys, you need to follow her.
Well, Andrea, I appreciate you coming on. We could get you back hopefully in 2020. Come back on. Would that be great?
I cannot wait to tell you all the things I've accomplished.
Oh, well, I can't wait to hear about the new book.
Yes,
So,
good luck on the new book. We're
I'm so excited
excited
to tell
for
you about it. But later.
I will. I can't wait. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks to both of you.
All right. Hey, listen, remember, live life by design, not by default. You could go out there and do it. This is HIT, everything high intensity tactics for growth. Suzanne, thanks for joining today.
Thank you for having me. I love Andrea so much.
I know she's amazing, and it's also amazing to get some awesome advice. And so, you know what? Let's not listen to inner critic today.
Journaling 10 things every day.
And the law of comparison. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, guys.